Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session on deep learning. As you today, we will have a practical session, and that will be taken by Ginny ma'am. Ginny ma'am, I have given you the right so that you can start with the session.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we are going to cover feed-forward neural network using images, right? Yesterday we did feed-forward neural network where we want to train our data, the numeric data, and we want to predict the binary classes, right? So today we'll predict the 10 classes, that is multi-class classification using image dataset, right? So the most common image dataset we'll use that is the MNIST dataset that contains the handwritten digits from 0 to 9. So we have to predict that this digit is the which digit, right? So it is a multi-class classification problem with 10 different classes for each digit, right? So we'll use that. So most of the concepts that we did today, we did yesterday, will be covered, will be same as for today also. The only difference will be that the input will change, right? So accordingly, some of the parameters of the feed-forward neural network will change. Rest will remain same. Right? So we'll start with the same importing libraries. So we'll import the standard libraries that we require. That is NumPy library, Pandas library, and Matplotlib. And we'll write this line Matplotlib in line so that if any graph we draw or any image we have, it will be shown inside this Jupyter notebook. So if I run this, so all the libraries are working fine. Now, the first thing we'll use is the data set that we require, right? So yesterday we studied about the Keras library that it acts as an interface on the top of the TensorFlow library, right? So the Keras library also provide with some standard data set on which we can perform this deep learning directly, right? We don't need to download the data set. We don't need to create the separate files for testing and training. It gives us all that just using the Keras library, right? So we'll take this MNIST dataset from the Keras library directly. So to use that, we have a library. First of all, we know that Keras is on the top of TensorFlow. So from TensorFlow, we are going to call the Keras library. In Keras, there are certain data sets which we can on which we can perform the deep learning. So from that data list of data sets, we are importing the MNIST data set. So you can explore what other types of data sets are available and what can be done with that, right? So if I run this, now the data set MNIST has been imported as easy as this, right? So you don't need to do anything else. You can just import it using this library, right? So now I have imported the data set. So what I want is I want the training part and the testing part. So also Keras has divided this data set into training and testing by itself. So we are going to get that data. So first of all, we are getting X train, Y train, X test, and Y test. So like yesterday in the train test split, the order was X train, Y train, X test, and Y test. And similarly, here the order is X train and Y train first, X test and Y test second, right? So this is a standard arguments that you have to pass in this order only, right? So we have imported the MNIST dataset using the object MNIST, and from there we load our dataset. So for that we have a command load underscore data, right? So we load this data. If we run this, right, our data set has been loaded, right? To see that what the data set is, let's first of all see the shape of the data set. So for that, we are using dot shape function. So if I run this, so you can see that there are 60,000 images in the training set. And there are other two arguments here also, right? 28, 28. What this tell us? That the size of each image is 28 by 28, right? So the shape of the data set here tells us that there are 60,000 images in the Xtrain data set, and each image is of size 28 by 28. Similarly, if we want to see Y-train, so what it should have Y-train? There should be 10 different classes inside it, right? Okay, I think we have converted into comment. Yes. Now, if I run this, so you can see that we have different integers here: 5, 0, 4, 6, 8. So these are all the classes that we were talking about. That is, there are 10 classes from which we have to do the classification process. So it means that the first image that we have in the X train is 5, right? And second image we have in the X-train should be 0. So let us check that whether it's true or not, right? So for that, we can plot the images using PLT function. For that, there is, with the PLT object, for that, there is a function known as imshow. Imshow shows us the im for image. Show means that we can see the image from this function. That is why imshow. So we'll pass the first image. So first image is at index 0, right? In the X train, it is 0. So what it should be? It should be a 5, right? According to this class, it should be a 5. So if I run this, so you can see we have an image that is 5, right? It corresponds to 5. So we can match this. We can check one more. Suppose we are checking plt dot imshow. If we see the first image, so what should it be? It should be a 0, right? So if I run this, you can see that it is a 0, right? So we can match the images with their classes. So we have got the data set correctly, right? So if I want to see the shape of the Y-train, I can also see that what it should be 60,000 classes, right? 60,000 labels. I run this. So we have 60,000 into 1, right? That is, we have 60,000 labels with us. Similarly, you can visualize testing also, the testing data also for X test and for the Y test, and you can map some of the values also, right? To see that what type of data you have got. Now, we have to check how many unique values are there in this Y-train. So we know that there are different multi-class classes here, and by default we know there are 10, but to make sure that they have 10 unique values, so we'll find the labels, that how many unique labels are there. So for that, we'll use the function that we did in the first class. We'll calculate the length of So whose length we are want to calculate? Unique values, right? So unique np dot unique function. So in that we are going to pass from which we want to calculate the unique values from. So we want to calculate the unique values from y train. So if I run this, so you can see that there are 10 different classes in the Y train, and we have to perform multi-class classification on that. Now, the next thing that is different here is that, first of all, we have to convert this Y train data into the categorical data, right? These are the categories. And if we see the type of this, it will show us the numbers, integer numbers. So we want to convert it from the integers numbers to the categorical data, right? So you can see here that the type are integer numbers here. So these should not be the number. These should not be considered as random numbers. These should be considered as categories, right? So to convert it into the categories, there is a class in the TensorFlow dot keras. So keras is built on the top of TensorFlow. So TensorFlow dot keras dot utils. We are going to import to categorical. That is, we want to convert our data to the categorical data, right? So if I run this, yes, the library has been imported. Now, which data I want to convert into categorical? Bytrain data. I want to convert it into the categorical data. So we'll call this to categorical. And in that, I'm going to pass my original bytrain, right? So if I run this, now the data has been converted into the categorical data. Similarly, we can categorize our Y test data also. So if I run this to the Y test, we'll pass our original Y test. Now the data has been converted into the categorical data. So if I run this Y train, see, you can see that we have the categories here, right? So this is a 2D array. So how can you find out that it is a 2D array? You can see here two square brackets, right? So one for each list. Inside that we have the categories with us, right? So we have convert our data into the categorical data. So after that, now the next important thing is, while we design the feed-forward neural network, we had to give the input bins to it, right? That is the number of input units, that number of input neurons we want in our first layer to be, right? In that case, it was simple. It was equal to the number of features we have, right? But here we don't have any features. So what would be the size of the input? What would be the size of the input? It would be the image that we are giving, right? Single image will be considered as an input to the feed-forward neural network, right? So how will we get the size of the image? By taking out the dimensions of it, right? So the image size, first of all, we'll take out the image size. So how are we going to take the image size? From the X-train, we'll take out any one of the image and take out its shape. Let's suppose we are taking the image at index 1. So you have the image size as 28, right? So, but now the image is a 2D image, right? So it will be a matrix of 28 by 28. So before transferring it to the input, we have to create a single flattened layer out of it. So the input size will be equal to input size will be equal to the image size we have, but it is one dimension similar to the way we have another dimension also. So we'll multiply with that. So this will be our input size that will be given to the feed-forward neural network. So it means how many number of neurons will be there in the input layer? It will be 784 neurons in the input layer. Now you see why we use other type of algorithms instead of feed-forward neural network for images. Why? Because you can see if the image size is as small as 28 by 28, we will have 784 neurons in the input layer, right? So I hope you get it what I am trying to say here. Now I have got my input size, but now the actual image we have is a 2D image, right? That is 28 cross 28. But the number of neurons we are having is 784 in the single order, right? So it means we have to flatten our image. So to flatten our image, it means we have to reshape it from a 2D image. We have to convert it into a 1D array, right? For that, I gave you the function in the first class, that is reshape function, right? Where we were reshaping the arrays. So that will come handy here. So we want to reshape into a 1D array. We have to flatten it. So inside it, what we will give the original X string that we wanted to reshape. So and comma to which shape we want it to be changed to, right? So here we have to provide the shape. Now what I want is I want a 1D array. So for that we use a argument -1, right? Suppose if you want to have let me complete this first, then I tell you -1 comma the now the next should be how many rows you want equal to the input size, right? So you want one column, but how many rows is equal to the input size. So if I run this, and now if I take the image, like first image out of it, so you can see it is a 1D array that consists of 784 values, right? The pixel 784 pixel values, right? So what if I wanted like one row and all the columns? So in that case, -1 would come here and the input size would come here, right? So you know the first one is the column and second one is a row. That is how reshaping works, right? So we have reshaped our array to the size or to the shape we want. So if I check the shape now, we have 60,000 images of size of number of pixel as 784, and initially it was, I have shown you here that initially it was 60,000 comma 28 by 28. So we have converted this 2D image into a single flattened image that consists of 784 values, right? So we have everything we need for our model to train. Right? So we have our input size that we want to give. We have our flattened input, which we want to give. We have converted our Y training and Y test data into the categorical data. So we are done with that also. The only thing that we are left is the rescaling of the data. So you know what rescaling is? So we take all the values in between the range of 0 and 1. So here you can see that we have values 212, 253, 253, right? We are rescaling down these values. So why rescaling is important? Because it helps to reduce the computational time. So we will do the rescaling, the last thing that was left before building the neural network. So xprint is equal to for this we have a function as type So how will you rescale this values down to between 0 and 1? So you have to divide it by the highest value, that is 255. You know that there are 255 values, right? From 0 to 255. So that's why we are dividing it by 255. Now, so what type of data will be there? Now you see that there are integer type data, right? You have here integer 8, int 8. But when you divide by 255, you will have floating point values, right? That is why we are giving here the actual conversion, that is we are getting the float 32 value, right? So you have got this syntax. What we are doing here is we are dividing our xstring data by 255. But while dividing the data by 255, it is now converted from integer to float, which we have to explicitly define, right? So if I run this and if I suppose print this first image. So now you can see all the values are between 0 and 1, right? Here were some pixels that have been reduced. So we have this float type 32 values, right? Similarly, we are going to do with the xtest also. So for xtest also, we'll reshape first and then we'll convert it, then we'll rescale it. For reshaping, we'll use this direct same thing. So we'll copy this down here. And we are converting now test values. So I want to reshape them to the same, right? Rest will remain the same. We have reshaped our excess values. Now what we have to do, we have to rescale our excess values also. So always do whatever you are doing with the training data, do it with the test data also, right? So we have converted our X data into the desired shape and desired rescaling. So that was for the input. We have got everything we want for our input. Now we are supposed to build our models, right? For that, we'll import some of the libraries. We are importing Keras library. And what are the library we imported? From models, we want to import a model. So here also we'll use the sequential model. And from layers, I want to import the dense layer. So all the importance library has been added. Now what I will create an object for our classifier that will be sequential in nature, just like I did yesterday. So I have a classifier. Now we are going to add the layers to it. So I'm going to add a layer. First hidden layer we are going to add. So for that, we need what type of layer? A dense layer. So the input arguments were, first of all, we needed what the size of the number of neurons in the input layer, right? So input underscore dim is equal to, so where we have our number of neurons, so you can see here, right? Input size. So we have our number of neurons here, 784. So I'm going to put that here. So instead of giving it manually, I am calculating it and then providing here, right? I'm giving the input size as 784 number of neurons in the input layer. Now we have to add number of neurons in the hidden layer. Let it be 256. You can or 128, right? You can take any number here. So I'm taking, like, suppose 256 I'm taking. You can try and test different numbers. Then I was initializing the kernel. That is, you are not supposed to worry about this. It is just initializing the weights here, uniform weights throughout. And the last important thing is the activation. So we have the ReLU activation, that is rectified linear unit, right? So we are added with the first hidden layer. Now similarly, we have to add the second hidden layer. Suppose I'm adding here. So what I need the number of neurons in the hidden layer. So I does not need to provide the input values here. So I'm removing that. I think rest will remain the same, right? So this is at the second hidden layer. Similarly, you can add multiple hidden layers as depending upon the accuracy that you are getting, right? Now we are added with the second hidden layer. We have to add the output layer, right? So I'm just copying this same here. Now we want the number of neurons in the output layer, right? So for that, where we have our classes, unique classes, here, num labels, right? So there can be 10 classes, there can be 20 classes, there can be n number of classes. So how you can find that? Using np.unique function. So I'm directly using this instead of giving it manually. I'm taking num labels. That is, I have 10 classes. So I need 10 neurons in the output layer. And the activation function would also change, right? So yesterday, when we wanted to predict the binary classes, so we want the probability between 0 and 1. So we did use the sigmoid function, right? But here there are multiple classes and we are using the multi-class classification problem. So for that, the best activation function we use is the softmax activation function at the dense layer, right? So we are using that activation function. I have added the two hidden layers, one input layer and one output layer, right? Our model is ready. Now we have to compile our model. So for that, I have classifier dot compile function. So here, what we wanted to give the optimizer, that is same as yesterday, that is Adam. Now the next thing is a loss. Now yesterday we did the binary cross entropy loss, right? Because cross entropy loss is used when we have the classification problem, and we had the two class classification problem. That is why we use a binary cross entropy. So what type of loss function will be used here? We have 10 classes. Now we cannot use binary cross entropy loss function. So for that, there is a categorical loss function, right? We have our categories, right? We converted the y-train and y-test data into categories. That is why we are using here categorical loss, cross entropy, right? This is the cross loss function that we are going to use. And then we are supposed to provide the matrix. You can have n number of matrix. I am just using the accuracy, right? So we are done with the compiling part. Okay, we have some error here. Okay, these are supposed to be in quotes. Yes. So we have compiled our model. So if we see the summary, so what we have done. Yes. So you can see we have the first hidden layer with 256 neurons. So these are the number of trainable parameters that are there. How these trainable parameters are achieved, you must have studied in your class. Next is the second hidden layer. We have again 256 neurons in the hidden layer. These are the trainable parameters in the second layer. And the third one is the dense outer layer that have 10 neurons in the output layer, and these are the number of trainable parameters. So you get this 10 from num labels here, right? So these are the overall parameters that we have generated with our model. So now we are going to run our model. Yesterday we ran it on 100 epochs. So, but for images, it might take some extra time. So we are going to do it for around 20 epochs, right? So you can increase the number of epochs as per your requirement. So we have the classify.fit function. Inside the fit function, we are going to give our X train data, the Y train data, the batch size. So let's say we are giving 128 batch size and epochs is equal to, let's say we start with the 20 epochs, right? So if I run this, okay, we are getting the same error as yesterday again. I'm just rerunning the file. Just let me see if it is working now. Yes, now it's running. Sometimes the kernel gets stuck, right? But we were writing the code for so long. So I have just closed the file and run it again. So now you can see it's working. We are getting the results for 20 epochs. So you can see we started from the accuracy as 90% accuracy, and we are gone hitting 96, 97, 98, 99. So we are having very good accuracy here. So we have almost converged around 99% accuracy, right? So, and similarly, you can see the loss here also. So we have fitted our model on the 20 epochs. You can check different batch number, right? Different batch number, different number of units also. So it will give you different results, right? So if you have different number of neurons, it will give you different results. So let's try with 128 neurons. Suppose we have 128 neurons here, and we have 128 neurons here. So we have to run this again. We have a sequential. We added the dense layer with 128 neurons. We added again hidden layer 128 neurons. So in the summary, you can see that number of trainable parameters has been changed, which were initially different. And now if we fit our model again, so you can see, right, in the previous time, we started with the accuracy of 90%. Now we have started with the accuracy of 87 here, 87, 95, 96, we are increasing, but we are still able to reach around 99% of the accuracy, right? So you can change these number of epochs, you can change the batch size here, right, to see how these affect. So we'll try to keep low number of neurons as low as possible, but we also want to have the accuracy also, large accuracy. So you have to do a trade-off between the number of neurons and the accuracy. We are still able to achieve 99.70% accuracy at around 20 epochs, right? So if I am going to plot the intermediate values, I have stored these results in the, stored all this in the results variable. So from that results variable, I'm getting out the accuracy. results dot history So if I run this, I'm getting the 20 accuracies that I have got in between, right? So if I plot these accuracy using plt.plot function, I'm going to plot the accuracy. I am setting the X label as number of epochs. That is how many times that training algorithm is running. And on y-axis, we have our accuracy. So y label is the accuracy. If I run this, you can see that our accuracy started from around 87% and it has increased around to 100%, but not actually 100%, a little low around 100%, right? So you must have seen here I have used single quotes here and I have used here double quotes. Here you can use any one, it will give you the same answer, right? And similarly, we can calculate the loss also. So loss is equal to results dot history. From there, we are getting the value of loss. Right? So how I am getting these values in the by training here, you can see these variables. So I'm taking out these variables, right? If suppose you are training and you are getting some different here some different variable. Suppose in some cases it sometimes shows ACC, right? Or if you have run it multiple times, it sometimes shows accuracy _1, loss _1. So you have to provide that label to get the results, right? So I'm using this label loss. And if I run this, so you can see the loss that we have got. Now I'm going to plot this plt.plot. So whenever we are using any variable, it is supposed to be used without quotes. And if we are using some string values, so we have to do it with quotes. So I'm adding X label here. That is the number of epochs. We are adding Y label here. That is the loss. So I run this. You can see our losses started from around 0.45 and it is decreasing slowly till epoch 2, but then it decreases and here we are almost converged around 0, right? Not exactly 0, but around 0, right? This type of loss function we want, right? Now next thing is we want to predict on the test set. So this is the important part. It is different from what we did yesterday, right? So see this carefully. I will try to explain this slowly. What we are getting here is we are getting Y prediction values. So this will be saying that we are using classifier.predict function, but the output will be different here, right? So check that. We are giving X test values. So we are not giving original values, right? Original Y test values. So if I run this, so you can see this output that it is a 2D array, right? There are multiple values here, but we should get the answer in the form of like classes, right? 7, 6, 5, 0. This type of answer should come, but it has not come like that, right? Why? Because it is giving us the probabilities, but we have 10 classes, so it is giving the probability of each class, right? So if we have 10 neurons, so it will give us, So what is the probability that the first neuron will fire in the output layer? Then it will give us the probability. With what probability the second neuron will fire in the hidden layer, in the output layer. Similarly, all the 10, it will tell us what is the probability that these neurons will fire, right? So how we are supposed to predict classes from that? So to do that, what we need to see is that where the probability of firing a neuron is very high, right? The maximum probability where it is. So we are going to treat that as the final class. You got my point? This point, but I'm saying that, for example, if I have 10 classes, it is giving us that the 20% chance that the first neuron will fire. There is a 30% chance that second neuron will fire. Similarly, there are other also. So if 30% is the maximum probability of firing a neuron, so it means it has the best confidence, right? Best confidence answer. So we will choose that class as a final class, right? So to show you, to make it more clear, let's see one out of this. So it means it consists of 10 columns, right? And there are multiple rows. Rows will be equal to the number of instances, right? Let's see the first instance. So we are taking the first row and we are taking all the columns. All the columns here means all the 10 classes, the probability belonging to each class, right? So if I run this, you will see here that I have got 10 values, right? You can see 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Right? So we have the 10 values with us. So if you see, the highest probability is where? Wait, let me add one more thing here. So how to get, we have this probabilities, right? So how to get this one class out of it? For that, what I am going to tell is I am going to take the maximum probability that I told you, that we want the answer that is having the maximum probability, right? And for that, we want to get the index. Which index has the maximum probability, right? So I'm going to put my by predict values to it, and we are going to perform this operation row wise, right? As I told you, one row belongs to one instance. So for one instance, I want the one class, right? So that's why axis is equal to 1 here, right? So we run this. How we are getting this. It's a two-dimensional.
When you ran it the first time,
Yes.
When you ran it the first time, I think you overwrite the Y prediction. So running a second time might give you a
No, that's not the case. Let me see again. Yes, now it's running. So I think we have run it multiple times, that might be showing the error. So you can see now here that we have got the classes, right? So now let's match it here. So here you could see we have the same answer. Let's store it in another variable so that I can show you the difference between these two, right? Let's run this again. So yeah, now I have taken different variable for this so that I can show you both and tell you how it is giving us the answer, right? So np.argmax, how it is working, I want to show you that. So in the ypredict, I have taken the first row out of it. So can you tell me where the highest value is?
Index 2.
Yes, it has a highest value at index 2. Yes. So it is showing me that highest value is at index 2, right? Rest all other values are very small. So you can see here also that at the first index, we have got our class as 2, right? So it means it is giving us the index value where our probability is maximum, and based on that index, it is giving us a final class, right? So this I wanted to show you how this prediction values work, right? So initially it gives us the, if we just run this, it will give us the probability of firing each neuron. So to get the class out of it, what we will give np.argmax function, which give us the index which has the highest value, so that we can get a final class, right? So there is one more important thing, but to show you that, I want to show you something else first. Now we are supposed to run the confusion matrix, right? For that, sklearn.matrix import confusion matrix. CM is equal to, we are calling the function here, confusion underscore matrix. For that, we always provide our y-test values and the y-predict values. And now the y-predict values are, we are going to take is this one, the new one, that is the class one, right? So if I run this, you will see an error here, right? Let me show you the error first. So you can see that it is considering that the classification matrix can't handle a mix of multi-label indicator and multi-class targets. Why it is showing that we have y-predicted values as multi-class values, but if we see our y-test values, we have changed it here, right? In the, show you. Yes, we have converted y-test here to the categorical data, right? So if I run the y-test values alone, insert a cell here. So if I run this y-test, so you can see it is not giving one single value, right? It is giving us the class in the form of 0, 0, 0 and 1 where the actual class is, right? So to get a class here, we also need to provide the argmax function to y-test also before we have to plot the confusion matrix. That is why I wanted to show you the error, right? So I'm going to plot. So I'm going to do this argmax function here also. For that also, I'm going to get the new variable so that you can see the difference between these two. Here also we have to perform the function row wise, right? So I'm running x is equal to 1. So if I run this file underscore 1. So you can see now we have gotten our classes the way we want it to be, right? Now this at by prediction 1 and the test prediction 1 both are matching, right? So now we can give here to the confusion matrix. So like this, if I run this, now it is working fine, right? This was the tricky part, right? The testing part is a little bit tricky, but once you get used to it, you will learn that also. So yesterday the confusion matrix was 2 by 2 cross 2, right? But today we had the 10 classes, so it will be a 10 cross 10 matrix, right? So if I run this, you can see that I have got a 10 cross 10 matrix, right? Where the diagonal value shows the true values, right? Just like true positive and true negative. So it will be like true 0, true 1, right? True 2, true 3, and accordingly you will have false values, right? So you can calculate any number of parameters from here like we did the yesterday, right? So any doubts? First of all, you want me to explain any part that you have any confusion with? Because next 1 hour you are going to practice this feed forward neural network on the new data set that I tell you, right? So if you are having any problem in the any part, you can ask now.
Can you have a copy of the file, please?
For this, you don't need a copy of the file. I gave you the yesterday's file, right? Most of the work is same there. The anything that is different, you will do on your own today in the 1 hour, next 1 hour. If you still get any problem during those hours, then at the end we can share the file, right? But I would want to try you first, right? That you should be able to do this so that we can get that everybody is getting how we are going to do this. Because deep learning is specially used for images, right? So it is the important part.
Yes. In the beginning of this notebook,
Yes.
you use a parameter -1. Can you scroll up, please?
Where?
At the beginning, it was -1. Here it is.
Here?
No, go down, a bit down, a bit down, a bit down.
Here?
Yep, that one.
Okay. So
Why was -1 used, not 1?
okay, so this is a specially parameter. Then when we want to reshape our array to a one-dimensional array, so the by default argument that is used is -1, 1, right? So what it does, it will tell us that on which side, that is either on the row side or on the column side, you want your values to be, right? Whether you want a row dimensional array, that is you want more number of rows and one column, or you want one row and multiple columns, right? This is a standard argument that we follow. So it is -1, 1. It means that we have our values over one side, that is on the column side. And if we want it on the row side, it will be 1, -1, right? That is why
Okay.
yes, it is the
So-
reshape argument that we use.
Okay, so could you like put 2, 2, for example?
No, it is the standard, right? It will be -1 will be like fixed, right? And the other value will be changing. Like for example, here I wanted on the rows I want multiple rows, right? So on the we wanted here. Yes. So here we wanted the first side to be fixed, so we are giving it -1. So other side we wanted to have a flattened array, right, on the row side. So we are giving here input size. That is instead of 1, we are giving the value, that is how many rows we want, right? And if we want how many columns we want, so we'll have the input size to the here, like here, and -1 will be shifted to this side. -1 will remain fixed, its position will change, right?
Okay, thank you.
So we are going to once revise what we have done here. So first of all, we have imported all the libraries that were required, that is NumPy, Pandas, and Matplotlib. Then I have used the dataset directly from Keras. So you can use other datasets that are present in the Keras under Keras.dataset. There we have list of dataset. You can use any one of them. So we are using handwritten dataset, MNIST. So we are taking some of the examples how our data is actually there. So for the let me come here. So the important things here were, first of all, the input size. So what would be the input size here? So input size will always be equal to the image, the size of the image we have. We had 28 cross 28 image, but it was a two-dimensional image. For the feed-forward neural network, we have to give it a flattened input. So we converted this input and we reshaped this input into a single one-dimensional array of size 28 cross 28, right? And these number of units you can change, try and test, and rest everything here was same. And here we had the output units, that is the number of labels, the unique labels that we have. So that can be counted using np.unique function, right? And rest these were same things that we did yesterday. And the last important part was this. So we were using the softmax activation function here. So what it was giving us, it was giving us the prediction probabilities, that what is the probability that the first neuron will fire, the second neuron will fire. Similarly, the number of neurons we were having in the output there, it was giving us the probability of each of that. Now we have to decide which probability are we supposed to use. Yesterday we did that, we did provide a threshold, like if the probability is greater than 0.5, we were giving it a class 1, otherwise we were giving it a class 0, right? But now that function will not work here, right? Why it will not work? Because we have more than 2 classes. So for that, what we are going to do is, we are taking that neuron that will give us the maximum accuracy. So we see in the example also that we take the first out of it, and to see that the second index was giving the maximum accuracy, that is, there was more chances that second index would be fired. So we can see that the second class was 2. So that is how we get our final classes, right? And similarly, we wanted our y-test to be of the same type. So we converted that also, and we plotted the confusion matrix, right? So if we want to calculate the accuracy out of it, how will you calculate that? So the denominator would be the sum of all these, right? That is the number of instances we have. And in the numerator, it will be the correct values, that is 968, 1129, 1007. So it will be the sum of these diagonal values divided by total number of values to calculate the accuracy, right? And similarly, you can calculate the sensitivity also, specificity also of the different classes, right? Accuracy can be calculated of the whole confusion matrix, but rest of the parameters we calculate the class wise, right? So that's it for this feed-forward neural network. Any doubts?
Ma'am, I have another question.
Yes.
Yesterday we used standard scaler to scale the
Yes.
data,
Yes.
but today you divided by 255. Can the standard scaler be used?
Yes, but standard scaler here does not give any importance. Why? Because in the yesterday's class, the different features were having different values, right? Some values were quite high and some values were quite low. That is why we need a standard parameter that could convert whole data into the same range. But here we know that the values will be either it will be between 0 to 255. We are sure of that, because pixel values can be from 0 to 255. That is why we directly divided by 255, right? That is why we did not use the.
Okay. Thank you.
That is why, yeah. Okay. So what you do is, all the students, there is a CFAR10 data set in the Keras library that we use now. We use MNIST data set, right? Similarly, there is a CFAR data set. This one, you can try your results on this data set. So this data set consists of images of 10 different objects, and you have to classify among the 10 objects that which image is which, right? So try to do this, and as you are getting the errors, you can ask me, right? Or if you are getting any doubts. Meanwhile, if there are other doubts, you can share with me, right? So please try to do this same thing on a CFAR10 dataset. To show you, I can show you the dataset also. So this dataset, CFAR10 dataset, consists of 10 classes where we have the images of an airplane, automobile, a bird, cat, deer, dog. Different types of images are there, and you have to classify among them. Right? This is a CFAR10 dataset I have given here. So you can see from here also if you want to see the description of this data set. So please try now and ask the doubt if you have.
Ma'am, what is the meaning of these lines that are written under import TensorFlow STF?
This I have added just so that my notebook does not get stuck in the kernel, like the error we were getting in the starting today as well as yesterday, right? So this was I actually searched about it and found that this error is due to the GPU version here. So I am running my TensorFlow on the GPU. That is why I was getting this error. So somewhere kernel was getting stuck in between. So these were just the lines so that TensorFlow, by using TensorFlow, my kernel doesn't stuck, right? So that's why I was just using these lines. You don't need to worry about this, right? This was just so that I does not get that error any other time because I am running my code on the GPU. So should I stop sharing?
Any more doubts, anyone? Ma'am, there is a doubt in the chat window about normalizing our data.
Just let me read about it. There are two different things. One is standardization and one is normalization. Both these methods are used. Both these methods are used for feature scaling, but the range is different, right? In the standard scaler, what we do is we make the mean of all the columns as 0 and standard deviation as 1. In normalization, we divide it by the maximum and minimum values to get the range, right? One gives the range between -1 to 1 and one gives the range between 0 to 1. It's just that difference. Otherwise, both are used for feature scaling, right? But standardization and normalization is different. Normalization we normally do when we want our data to be normally distributed, right? You know that you know about Gaussian distribution, normal distributed data. So if I want our data to be normally distributed, I use normalization in that case. Otherwise, I normally use standard scaler for feature scaling, right? So how to use confusion matrix means we can get various parameters out of it, right? If suppose I want to calculate the accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, so I can get that out of that. So that is what we can use the confusion matrix for. One also asks how we can find metrics like precision recall. So we have 10 classes. So it is same as that of 2 by 2 cross matrix. The only difference is that now the true positive and true negatives would be different, right? Instead of only just true positive, it would be like true for class 1 and true for class 2. So for that, what you will be doing is the sensitivity and specificity values or the precision values will be calculated class wise. Like for example, I want to calculate the sensitivity of the class 1. Then according to that, you have to check what for that class what false positive is and what false negatives are. And according to that, you can calculate all other metrics, all other parameters, right?
Anybody else? Ma'am, can we wind up the session if there are no doubts?
Actually, the ma'am said that they are supposed to do the other assignment that I give them so that they can ask from that if they are doing it, right? You can ask
That
them
is the
if they
question,
want to.
yes.
Yes, the question is like we have used MNIST data set. So instead of that, they can try using CPAR10 data set. I told them about that data set also.
Okay. Ma'am, should I make that as an assignment in Google Classroom?
You can do that also, but it was that if they have any doubt, they can ask now because I think the feed-forward neural network is covered. So there will be no more practical of this feed-forward neural network. So I wanted if there are any doubts that can be covered today.
Okay. So we'll wait till 4:30 or 20, I guess. So till that time, I think we all can cover the new data set, other data set, and see the results of that. If still you have a doubt, we are still here so that you can ask any doubts from them.
Yes, sure. So if there are any doubts, you can ask in next 20 minutes, then we can wind up the session.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll continue the session till 4:30.
Ma'am, how can we import dataset in PyCharm that you have given?
Using the same Keras library, you can import that, right? It does not come like it is not different for different Anaconda or PyCharm. It is related to the library that we use. If you have Keras library with you and a TensorFlow library with you, you are okay to go, right?
And ma'am, how can I provide input? Is it import any your given library or I have to provide it manually?
You can use the CPAR dataset also from directly from the Keras. Just explore the library that is there. The main library will be same. That is tensorflow.keras.dataset will be same. The name of the dataset will differ, right? You can check that dataset name from the net, right? So under what name the Keras have this dataset with you. But I have already actually provided you the name. It is CPAR10, right? Yes, one student has also added a link here. If you still does not find it, I can send you the link also.
Okay, ma'am, now I'm trying.
Yes. So that is why we are having this 20 minutes of practice session so that when you practice on your own, you can ask the doubts that you are getting. I have also added a link in the chat box. This contains a documentation of CPAR10 dataset so that you can see what all classes are present there and what the label means. Like for example, zero class belong to which category, right? So what is the object at class zero? All other details are present at this. So you can see from here also, right?
Ma'am, I am not able to import Kira's library in my PyCharm.
What you are not able to import?
Kira's library.
Keras, like have you installed it?
Okay, and first I need to install it.
Yes. First, just check whether TensorFlow is available or not. For that, try to import the TensorFlow library and see if it is getting imported or not. If not, it means you does not have a TensorFlow on your system. So first of all, install that TensorFlow and then install the Keras on top of that, right? You can use pip install command.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, I'll do that later on. And if I still having doubt, I can ask you tomorrow.
Yes, sure. No problem.
Anyone having any doubt? If you have implemented the code? Jimmy ma'am, can we end the session?
Yes, sure. If the,
Okay, ma'am.
we are not doing that.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have pasted the attendance link in the chat window. I'll keep the chat window open for another 2-3 minutes so that you can copy the attendance link. And after that, I'll end the session. And the attendance link will be open for another 10 minutes. So complete the attendance on time. Thank you.